I thought, well, what if the people in the nursing homes provided their own entertainment? And so that led me to thinking about this character called Shirley, who does a stand-up comedy routine. You know, she's in her 80s. She's decided to put herself in a nursing home. She's never done stand-up comedy before, and she decides to do it. and I thought, well, how far could that go?
Today on the Staying Alive and Rich podcast, I have a wonderful guest, Mr. Mark Fletcher from Melbourne. Mark has an illustrious career in publishing and media. You may have heard of him through his work Chasing Rabbits, which took both stage and screen by storm, and his award-winning musical Joe Starts Again. He's here with me today, and we are going to chat about his new project, which is endearing and charming, called Not Dead Yet. It's a beautiful story about Mark's journey with his late mother. Welcome to Staying Alive and Rich, Mark.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Before we get into Not Dead Yet, tell me a little bit about you. Tell me a little bit about your career. We were just chatting about your background.
Look, I failed high school, so that's always a good start. Failed high school, got a job with CSIRO.
Yep.
And this was in the early days of computers, and that was just wonderful. It really gave me a good grounding in technology. I learnt a lot there. I had 2 attempts at getting into university, and I did it for 6 months and decided it wasn't for me. I early on knew that I probably wasn't made to work for other people.
Okay.
So, in my early 20s, I started a software company because I thought nothing was going to stop me, indestructible, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was lucky. I found a groove that worked well, worked long hours and it worked out okay. So that's provided a good income. Still have the company today.
Wow.
It's a good, solid business, very stable people. And I always saw software as being a creative pursuit. It's like writing in English, but you're writing another code, another language.
You started this in 1981, and the fact that you could see the creativity side of it back then, when it was 1981, no one really knew what software was. I mean, unless you were in the field. Am I correct in saying that?
Look, all of the geeks in it, we all knew what it was, and we knew what it could do in terms of business beneficial.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it's hard work. It's a grind. And for me, the way through that was to see it as an elegance. There was an elegance to writing good code. And that same kind of motivational thought comes from writing creatively too.
This is a beautiful book.
Thank you.
And I'm going to let you tell me about this book because you decided, and it did make me think about a lot of things. And I've got my little notes here because I think some of the characters that you've built in this book are absolutely beautiful. And it does make you think a little bit about the future. But tell me how this book came about.
So my mum had been a very independent lady. She was probably at that stage about 84, 85, becoming unwell, had a fall, and we got to a point where really a nursing home was the only option to give her the sort of care that she needed. I was living in the city, she was out in Berwick, and there were limited options as to how she could kind of have a safe life.
Yeah.
And she is very practical. She decided nursing home is the way to go.
Yeah.
And so she didn't really like that too much. She liked her independence. So we soon settled into a routine where I would go out in the morning and do breakfast for her and just kind of make sure that she was having a good start to the day.
Yeah.
And if I was away, my daughter, Laura, she would go and do that in my place.
Oh, nice.
So every day we made sure that happened. My sister was living in Mildura at the time. She relocated to Melbourne to care for mum in the afternoons. And so she was in the nursing home for a year, and between us, myself and a couple of other siblings, we were seeing her every day. And just being in the nursing home for, say, 2 or 3 hours in the morning, things happen around you. You encounter the industrial side of nursing homes, I guess, if you like.
Yeah.
And I wasn't thinking about anything creatively through that time, but I was just very aware of what I was part of. And not long after Mum passed away, I then had the thought of a particular character, the Alexander character who I wrote about. And, thought about that in the context of being in the nursing home every day and what it was like, and seeing new people come along.
Yeah,
because nursing homes are very much about that. People come and they go, and it's life, it happens.
Yeah.
And I started to think about that and wrote a short version of that story, and then that evolved into the Alexander story that's there today. And I thought that's where I'd stop, because I was, I was happy with that. I liked the story. I felt it was good. And then someone said, maybe this is part of something else. And, sure enough, it became that. It didn't take a lot of work to think about other things, not only that I'd seen, but had thought when I was there.
Like what? What would you have thought about while you were there? Give me an example.
So one example is once a month on a Saturday afternoon, a local entertainer would come in, and I heard the most hideous Elvis impersonation ever. So Mum's room was, a couple of corridors away from the community hall or the community room, and there was this Elvis impersonator. He came in.
I reckon I know who that impersonator is. It might be this old fellow in Brighton I met a couple of weeks ago and had coffee with.
He put his old cassette player down and started pumping out some tunes, and so I thought, what is entertainment like? And I thought, well, what if the people in the nursing homes provided their own entertainment? And so that led me to thinking about this character called Shirley, who does a stand-up comedy routine. She's in her 80s. She's decided to put herself in a nursing home. She's never done stand-up comedy before, and she decides to do it. and I thought, well, how far could that go? And so that kind of led to that story. And so different experiences give you those, I guess, jumping off points, if you like, for where stories can go.
I would imagine. Look, my late grandmother was in a nursing home. Unfortunately, she was overseas, and it was a very different nursing homes to the ones that we have here. But I do remember just from going to see her when I was there. This level of, I guess, integrity. And you mentioned your mum earlier. She was a very strong woman, very independent woman, and that comes with a lot of integrity and dignity. And I couldn't help but notice when I'd go and visit my grandma that part of that was kind of slowly getting chipped away at in the nursing home. How did you perceive that when you see, because knowing your mother raising you and being a certain type of woman, and now all of a sudden being in a place where she's kind of not being able to do the things that she's used to doing, and slowly that independence is chipping away, and it's how did you feel about that?
It's difficult to see because, Mum experienced a marriage breakup many years ago in the mid-70s. And so she was in this situation where, she'd become a lot stronger and, in some respects, tougher. And so Mum, who entered the nursing home, she didn't think she would end up there. She hadn't kind of figured that that's what would happen. And so you're right. You go into this situation and you have to let go of certain things. She was very used to preparing her own food and having her fish done a particular way that she liked, which she couldn't get. She liked a hot cup of tea and she couldn't get that. And so it's difficult. For the first few months, each week for those first few months was situations of, oh, well, I can't do that and I need to recalibrate my thinking to deal with the fact that I can't do that.
Yeah. Is it, I mean, my grandma was very much reliant on the nurses in the nursing home. So very different situation to the characters in your book, right? But I would imagine if you're a relatively fit 80-plus-year-old and you're capable of doing that, now all of a sudden someone else has to do it for you, that would be a bit of it would be very hard to recalibrate, as you said, emotionally. I'm thinking about it now in my head as I'm talking to you. I like my tea and coffee hot, and I like to make my own tea and coffee because I know the way I like it, and I can't imagine someone making me tea and coffee and then it's not to the way I like it, like it would, and then having to accept that, that's huge, isn't it?
It's a big thing, and particularly at this stage of your life where you know what's coming. You can't avoid the fact that you're going to die at some point. And because nursing homes, by their very nature, are very structured, they're commercial, there's this loss of personal, and that's what's really hard for people. And so, that's why we tried as a family to at least give mum those sorts of personal experiences on a regular basis, every morning, for example.
And build a little routine for her as well.
Yeah. I mean, she liked a good coffee. Where she was, there really wasn't an easy coffee shop. And so one morning I took her a Burger King coffee, or Hungry Jack's, I think it was called out there. And I said, look, I'm sorry, but tell me what you think. If you like it, then we can do that. And she loved it. And so there was a win, and so even though there are these other things happening, when you have something like that, it's a good situation. She liked canned two fruits. So, the right gift to go to her with was a couple of cans of two fruits and some cream. She'd had a little fridge, she put it in there, and she wouldn't have the dessert at the nursing home. She'd have the fruit and the cream. And again, it's a small thing, but it helped her feel that there was this independence that she wasn't seeing some of the others have.
Yeah. And you say it also when I was reading the press that it made you think about, aging people, and it made you think about all these people that had these lives prior to coming into the nursing homes, quite busy, active lives, much like what we have right now. And then all of a sudden it's a completely different lifestyle. How did that make you feel as an individually? Like when you kind of looked at all the people around you and and obviously the characters that you've built into this book, knowing that they've had 70 or 80 years of a lifetime experiencing different things, and now it's come to to this point in their life.
It's difficult because you know that it's coming, and there's this complexity around, well, do I lean into it? Well, no, I don't want to lean into that because then that will force me to slow down. I'm in an age where I probably should retire. I'm not retiring, and I don't really want to. But it's a common question that I get because people expect certain things to happen at a certain age, and it's difficult because, again, having seen what life is like in a nursing home setting, even if it's not a bad nursing home, if it's a good nursing home, it's still, it's regimented, it's at a certain pace. And I don't want to think about that at all. And so you probably look in the other direction and say, what can I do to have an active mind and have an active physical life? So, every day is like that. Every day is, today's going to be a good day and this is what I'm going to achieve today. And the future will take care of itself, I think.
I agree with you. We spoke about this morning with my husband. My husband said to me, I'm never going to retire. I go, well, you will eventually. He said, no, I'm never going to retire. I go, well, we'll have to find stuff for you to do then, And I said, I'll have to send you off to little excursions here and there to keep your mind and your body active. He's like, yeah, I'm happy to do that. But it is confronting having to think about where we're going to be in 40 years from now, and, are we going to be well enough, and, will we be able to be independent or somewhat independent and live those twilight years, as you so affectionately call them in your book, with some kind of grace and dignity. I particularly love the characters that you portrayed in this book, and there were a few that kind of that really made me think. And I as an author, and your mindset, how do you build these characters? I mean, there was one here. I have to the one where Alexander showers for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple thing. He just wants to have a shower. He doesn't want anyone looking at him. And all of a sudden he's in this place where, they've got to monitor his first shower in case he has a fall or in case he's not capable. How do you even, I mean, obviously you've had your experience with mum and you've seen all the people around where mum was going, but how did you come up? That's such an intimate story to the details of that. How did you formulate that?
I knew that Alexander he'd made a decision himself to go into a nursing home because he didn't want to be a burden to his son.
Mm-hmm.
And very practical person. And so he went into this with that very practical mindset, but he hadn't thought through some of the regulations that would be in place at the nursing home. And I needed a way for him to have to deal with letting go of some of his dignity and letting go of some of the ways he used to live his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was aware of some of the protocols that some nursing homes have, because when we were looking at where Mum might go with her, we were looking at all of the different nursing homes in the area, and we were particularly looking at restrictions and rules and things like that. And so the idea of Alexander being required by the nursing home to shower in front of somebody for the first time to demonstrate that he can do that, I felt that was a good way for him to confront the change in his or challenge to his dignity and the change in how he saw himself. It's that taking away of some independence from somebody at that point who was still quite well and healthy and certainly able to shower himself, but it wasn't enough for him to say, I can shower myself. He had to show them. And, when the idea came to me and I started to write it, it's incredibly sad to think about.
It is. It saddened me, because it's almost like you do that with a child, Let me see let me see if you can shower properly, Have you washed under your arms? Did you brush your teeth? Did you wash your hair properly? And then you're having that same conversation with a man that's lived a full life. And he still feels independent, but because of these rules and regulations, he's kind of, you're like, okay, I need to see it just in case you do have a fall, because then it's on us.
And the thing is, it's in an environment where, it's a business. The staff have limited time. They don't necessarily have time to talk with someone about what this really means and they don't have time to give the person time to deal with it. Because they've got this checkbox. They've got to move on to the next person. And so I guess that's part of what's difficult. And the Alexander story for me was about those steps of him, first of all, letting go and then trying to find his way so that he could be a new version of Alexander that was comforting for him and satisfying for him.
You did capture that really, really well. You really did. You really did. There's a beautiful mix of humour and humanity and resilience in your book. How did you strike a balance between addressing the heavy realities and the lighter and more hopeful moments?
Well, first of all, I wrote probably another 10 or 12 stories that didn't get included.
Oh, wow.
So part of that was about, what was I looking to say, and were those characters authentic? There's no point in saying, I'm going to write a book about nursing homes and just go bang, bang, bang. It's not about that. And so once I decided I was going to write a collection of short stories, I knew that I would write more than I needed. And the key was then choosing the ones that you would include. I'm not sure if it's 100% right, but I think I've made a reasonably good selection of the stories.
Oh, you've made an incredible good selection of the of stories. Yeah.
So it is hard to balance. I didn't want to attack nursing homes. But also I didn't want to make them out to be perfect places. So it's a really hard line. What I found interesting through the process, early on, I started engaging with people called beta readers.
Okay. What's
a beta reader is somebody who will read something that's being developed that's not yet ready for editing or anything like that. They'll just give you an opinion. And through a group that I joined, you're able to select the type of beta reader you're looking for. And I was typically going for women sort of 30, 35 plus, partly because I just wasn't confident that guys reading the story would kind of connect with it empathetically. So some of the early feedback I got was really helpful, because I was able to see which stories were landing really well and which ones people had questions on. And that kind of guided my process. And the beta readers are all anonymous. You just know their gender and their age. Don't even know which country they're in. And so it was
and you just send them off and they read and they give you some feedback.
And they agree to be confidential about it. And
how fantastic.
that's wonderful.
Great. That's a great tip for anyone publishing a book.
I didn't want to give it to any family. You know, and partly because if you give it to somebody you know, I think they're going to read it through the lens of how they see you.
Yes.
And I just wanted somebody I have no connection with just to give me an opinion.
Yeah.
And the beta readers love it. They love connecting with new writing, they'll even take, 2 pages of a chapter and give an opinion on that. And it's just fascinating.
That's fantastic. And how do you get onto them? Is it like a beta reader website?
I actually found it through a Facebook group.
Oh, really?
Of all things. So the Facebook group has some beta readers in it, and then they connected me with another group that's not part of Facebook, that's more of an international community, and that's where I connected with it.
Okay, interesting.
So it was just wonderful. And, some stories that I was working on, I just killed off because of beta reader feedback.
It's important because it's really hard to check in with yourself, especially when you're creating the whole thing yourself and you don't have someone else that, can say, oh, maybe don't put that bit in. And it's great because it's unbiased too, because you can shoot it out and then you're actually getting, like you said, someone that doesn't know you, doesn't know your life, doesn't know what is whether they engage with the story or they don't.
Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant idea for anyone, for young authors or anyone that's already published a book. I think it's a great
I found it very helpful.
Before your personal experience, you mentioned your own ignorance regarding nursing homes. How do you hope Not Dead Yet might change the perceptions of others who haven't had close connection to such a setting?
Oh, my goodness. I would hope that people, when they drive past a nursing home, don't just see, a building that doesn't look very special. I hope they realise that these places are keepers of wisdom and history and feelings, and that they're very personal situations. The challenge is that with privately owned nursing homes that are run for profit, we don't get to see the reality of the situation, I guess, is what I would say. And, on the one hand, you want governments to do more and do better, but on the other hand, you actually probably want families to do more and do better and be more engaged.
I agree.
I think families, and I say this as somebody who's facilitated their mum getting into a nursing home, but I think we've got to do better at caring for the older members of our family, and if it is to be in a nursing home, finding a way for it to be a better experience than it is. To be with people who haven't had a family visit for 6 months.
It's heartbreaking.
Oh, it's just dreadful.
It's heartbreaking.
And I've seen that, and it's an awful situation. It's just. And look, there can be a whole lot of reasons for it. We don't know their lives or whatever.
Yeah.
But still, it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And all of us need to do better at that.
What are some of the funny moments you experienced whilst Mum was in the nursing home? Were there some funny moments where you just had to you couldn't do anything but laugh?
There was a guy who would come into her room in his underwear, and.
How old was he?
He was in his 80s.
Oh, bless him.
He
just underwear, nothing else.
Yeah, he wasn't sure why he was doing that. Her initial reaction was she didn't need to see that. I don't need to see that. I'm too old. I don't.
Get out.
Yeah. But then it became a funny thing of, has he visited today? And so it became a cheeky thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's an example of, something for her that was negative, turning into, a positive, bit of interest, bit of a laugh. That sort of thing was fun.
What were the things that she embraced and the things that she hated?
She hated the fact she couldn't get warm water for a cup of tea.
That would drive me crazy.
Yeah, the urn was set on warm. It was never on hot.
Is that so they don't burn themselves? Yeah.
And look, there's a reason for all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I selfishly, I would say the thing that she loved was the fact that she saw more of family in the nursing home than when she was not in the nursing home. Because she lived she'd been in a retirement village for 20 years. And it was on a hill. She had a view of the city out in Berwick. It was a beautiful, beautiful situation. But, I would visit maybe once every 2 weeks. So she moved to the nursing home and I'm seeing her every day. And so...
Was that because she was a bit closer, or is it because you felt like, you know what, I want to be here for Mum right now because, I don't know how much time I have left and, I want to make as many memories and moments?
Look, a combination of those things. It was also a factor of I knew I wouldn't want to be there by myself every day. And so I thought, look, I can do this. All I've got to do is change my schedule, go out there first before I go to the office. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
And it worked out, from that point, I got a lot from it. She got a lot from it. And then other members of the family pitched in too and did various times of the day.
Yeah.
And I think we all got to see more of her because of that. And I think she appreciated that.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. There were some moments where they would do community sing-alongs and she enjoyed those. She really liked that a lot. She was a talker. She could talk underwater. And so if there was somebody who was up for a talk, she would enjoy that experience as well.
Nice.
Because she was close to people who were happy to talk.
Yeah.
So there were certainly plenty of opportunities like that were terrific. The thing that I'd say is it was an insight to go, if you like, behind the curtains and see what it's like.
Yeah.
And that was a wonderful experience.
Yeah. Did you make some new friends there? They would have loved to. They would have loved seeing you come in every day. It would have been something that I would imagine it would have been something that everyone in the nursing home would be like, oh, Mark's coming in today. I wonder what he's going to cook, Mum, or what they're going to have for breakfast.
Look, and myself and my brothers and sister as well, in the sense that, often you get the comment, well, no one else is getting this many visitors. Because we had let ourselves in, it was pretty easy to get in there and do it. And, the staff, I think, were relieved not having to worry about, for example, breakfast or morning tea or afternoon tea and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
The fact that 4 or 5 of them came to her funeral was just extraordinary.
That's beautiful.
So, that was kind of a moment of understanding that it's sort of the connections meant something, I think.
Yeah. I want to ask you something because I was reading part of your book and I know, but I need to find my chapter. All right. And I don't want to spoil it too much because I really want people to go out and get your book, which you can find on Amazon. It's a letter. And in that letter were 3 questions. Now, I've just got to find where I've marked it. There's a couple of things. So it's a letter from Arthur to Kiko, which I'd imagine was his pen pal back in the day or someone that he had to write a letter to. And she was in Japan. And then when he entered the nursing home, his kids had this box. So I'm just going to quickly brief over the kind of give people some context because I really want you to read this. And he has a box with the kids have marked, don't know what to do with, right? And there's a rock, some hair from when he was a child, some little teeth, and then there was a doll from Japan, this wooden doll from Japan, and a few letters from Kiko. And he'd only written back twice. And then finally, after 74 years, he decided to write back to her. And it's a beautiful, beautiful letter, which I'm not going to go into the letter, but he does ask 3 questions. And so I want to ask you those questions, all right, because they're great questions. And I think everyone needs to ask themselves those questions. And I think it's important to ask yourself these questions. So first question is, what are you leaving behind?
Children and grandchildren. I think they're the most important things. You know, I have two daughters. One of my daughters has two children. One's 3.5 and the other's 1.5.
Bless.
And my most important personal investment is in the grandchildren, seeing them 2 or 3 times a week, babysitting for them generally half a day to a day a week, and making sure that I have time for that above everything else.
Yeah.
Because I think an investment that you can make in people is more important than anything else.
I think that's what stays with people the most. I think, you know what, I think when I was reading these questions, I'm like, what would I leave behind? And I think for me, other than precious moments, beautiful moments, it's that interaction that you have with the people that are nearest and dearest to you. It might not even be nearest, but you might have that small interaction with someone and change their life and have an impact. And I think that stays behind more than anything. And you said yourself, when Mum passed away, she had 4 of the nursing home staff. So she's left something beautiful behind for them. Would you have done anything differently knowing what you know now?
That's a really hard question.
Why?
So, look, the complexity is I was married very young. That marriage ended after 10 years at a time when I started a relationship with a man. And so what should I have known earlier? What wasn't I in touch with earlier? But then would I have still had children? I mean, there are all of those complexities around that. And so if I would put it this way, I think ending relationships is not easy.
No.
They don't teach it to you in school.
No.
And I wish I was better at that.
It is a complex question, but it's one, I think it's a reflective one where you go, well, who would I have been? You know, where would I have been? You know?
It is good to look back.
Yeah.
But it's important to not look back so deeply that you get stuck in a well you can't get out of.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah,
So you've got to keep a bit of rope up on the surface so you can drag yourself out of there.
Of course. Or just tug it and say, hey, get
me out of here now.
Get me out of here now. What do you think? You said you're not a religious man, but what do you think happens next?
I think you stop.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's I don't think there's a heaven, because if there is, then religion has done some pretty bad things to people, because it's this whole blackmailing you into certain behaviours just so that you get there. And I don't think that's a healthy situation. Look, I think you just stop. But I think what happens is people reflect and possibly realise some connections that they weren't seeing necessarily on a daily or regular basis. So they realise pieces of you are in them, in different character traits and things like that. That's what I'd like to think happens, so that you live on in some other way rather than becoming a tree or, you know, being in the clouds or whatever.
Yeah. What's next for you now, Mark? Are you going to write another book?
It'll be another collection of short stories, and it's about people who lost their way and are trying to find their way back.
Okay.
And that's what I think it's going to be. I've got a couple of stories that I've done, and I'm pretty happy with them, so we'll see where it goes.
Oh, that's good. That's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, an absolute pleasure talking about your new book, Not Dead Yet. And you can buy it on Amazon.
Yeah.
Can you buy it on Booktopia?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. I thought I saw it on Booktopia. So go out there and get it, folks. It is a great read. It's endearing, it's charming, it's funny, and you fall in love with the characters. You can't help but fall in love with the characters. And I just want to say thank you once again for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.